It was the kind of night that crept under your skin. Richmond's south side slept restlessly beneath a thick curtain of fog and drizzle, streetlights casting long, golden streaks across rain-slicked pavement. The city was quiet, but the silence wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, the kind that held its breath before something shifted. At exactly 11:47 p.m., Denise Owens woke up without knowing why. Her eyes blinked open as if tugged by a memory. Not a sound had stirred, not a flash of light, not even a dream. But her chest ached, an ache she had carried for 11 years, so heavy it had taught her how to live with numbness. She sat up, reaching instinctively for the glass of water on her nightstand. Empty. Maybe it was the weather. Maybe it was her bones whispering. Maybe it was nothing at all. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate taps on the front door. Not frantic, not forceful, but enough to still the air around her. She paused. No one knocked at this hour, not here. Denise wrapped herself in the old cardigan draped over the chair and moved down the hallway, her bare feet barely making a sound against the floorboards. The house, like her heart, creaked with age and quiet sorrow. When she opened the door, the porch light flickered. Standing there was a girl, soaked to the skin, hood drawn low, water dripping from her sleeves. No umbrella, no suitcase, just a faded canvas backpack clutched tight to her chest. She couldn't have been older than 17, maybe 18, but her eyes were older, deep-set, hollow, worn. Denise's hand remained on the doorframe, knuckles whitening. She didn't speak at first, neither did the girl. Then finally, in a voice so soft it barely broke the rain, "I think I used to live here." Denise's breath caught. Time froze. The porch light flickered once more, and she swayed. Her body folded before her mind could catch up, collapsing onto the floor. The girl stepped forward instinctively but didn't enter. She stood still, unmoving, staring past the open door, as if waiting for the house to say her name. It wasn't until hours later, under dim yellow light and the distant hum of an old refrigerator, that they sat facing each other in the living room. Denise had come to with a cold cloth on her head, her breath uneven, her hands trembling. The girl now wore one of Malcolm's old sweatshirts, faded maroon, stitched at the collar. They hadn't said much. There was too much weight in the air, not suspicion, not fear, just history pressing in on itself. Finally, Denise asked, voice barely more than a whisper, "What's your name?" The girl hesitated. "I don't know." Denise blinked, trying not to let her tears spill. "How did you get here?" "I walked." "From where?" "I don't know." Each word felt like reaching for smoke. Denise leaned forward slightly, her fingers twisting the edge of the couch cushion. Her eyes scanned the girl's face. Soft jawline, full lips, that dimple near her left eye. So much had changed, but something still remained. "Amira," she dared. The girl said nothing, but her eyes flickered. Outside, the wind pressed against the window like a forgotten memory trying to get in. Denise didn't breathe, didn't move. She was waiting for the world to fall back into place. Then came the sound of keys. The front door opened, and Malcolm Owens stepped into the house, rain still on his jacket, confusion in his brow. His gaze locked on the girl in the armchair. And then his voice, rough, breaking, spoke the name neither of them had dared believe in a decade. "Amira?" The girl looked at him as though trying to recognize a dream from long ago. "Do you know me?" he asked. A pause, then softly, "You used to read me stories about a girl on an island." Malcolm dropped his keys. Denise covered her mouth. Their daughter had come home. But as Amira looked around the room, the photos on the wall, the worn rug beneath her feet, the scent of old fabric and familiarity, her face twisted, not in joy, not in relief, but in hesitation, as if the house remembered her more clearly than she remembered herself. The room was quiet. Not the comforting kind of quiet you find in lullabies or Sunday mornings, but a tight, watchful stillness, like the house itself was listening. Amira sat curled into the oversized armchair, her fingers tracing the seam of the old sweatshirt she wore, sleeves too long for her arms. Denise hovered in the kitchen, pretending to busy herself with cleaning counters that didn't need cleaning, opening and closing drawers, searching for the right question that wouldn't shatter what was already breaking. Malcolm paced by the window, peering through the blinds every so often, as if expecting someone, or something, to follow her here. Amira didn't speak much. She watched everything. The dust in the corners, the ticking of the hallway clock, the way the light fractured through the kitchen blinds and drew stripes across the floor. She stirred her tea slowly, letting the spoon spin in circles, metal against porcelain. Denise finally broke the silence, her voice delicate and hesitant. "Did you sleep all right?" Amira nodded without looking up. "Do you want something else to eat?" Another shake of the head. Then, softly, Denise tried again. "Do you remember anything from where you were?" Amira's spoon paused mid-spin. Her lips parted just slightly, and for a moment it looked like she might speak. Then just a whisper. "There was a red truck." Malcolm's footsteps stilled. Denise leaned forward. "What about it?" "It was loud, the engine. I used to listen for it. When it stopped, I knew I had to be quiet." "Whose truck?" "I don't know, but there was a woman. She drove it sometimes. She sang, but not kid songs. Old songs, Billie Holiday, Nina Simone. She smoked. Her voice was scratchy. Sometimes she called me Kid. Other times, Layla, never Amira." Denise swallowed hard. "Do you remember her name?" Amira stared at her tea. "She told me names didn't matter, that people only remember the pain, not who gave it to them." Malcolm stepped closer. "But do you remember your name?" A long pause, then uncertain, like tasting a word for the first time in years. "She used to call me Amira when she was in a good mood, only then." "Amira is your name?" Denise said quietly. "It always was." The girl blinked. Her fingers curled around the warm cup tighter. "She told me you didn't want me." Denise's breath hitched. Malcolm sat down, hard, on the ottoman across from her. "She said, you gave me away, that you couldn't handle me." "That's not true," Denise said instantly, voice sharp with hurt. Amira looked up for the first time in minutes, and her eyes were different now, open, questioning, uncertain. "Is it?" Denise stepped forward, one cautious step at a time, as if approaching an injured animal. "I never gave you away. You went missing. We looked everywhere. We never stopped. I never—" "But you knew her?" Amira interrupted. The room shifted. Denise froze. "What?" "The woman, Vera, that's what she called herself. She said you came to the house once, before I disappeared." Malcolm turned slowly to look at his ex-wife. "Denise?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I don't know what she's talking about." But her hands trembled. Amira's gaze sharpened. "She told me I was crying, that you couldn't take it anymore, that you needed a break, and you said yes." "That's not true," Denise said, but her voice was losing shape, deflating like a balloon slowly letting go. "Then why does everything feel wrong?" Amira asked. "Why does this place feel familiar but cold? Why do your eyes feel like I used to know them but don't?" Denise couldn't answer. Not because she didn't want to, but because somewhere, deep down, she was terrified that Vera might not have been entirely lying. That, in some moment of weakness, some silent breakdown never spoken aloud, something irreversible had happened. Amira stood, still holding her tea. "She said you were drowning, that you opened the car door and I walked through it." Denise stepped forward. "I didn't. I wouldn't. You're my daughter." "Then why do I feel like I'm visiting someone else's memory?" Amira said softly. "Why does it feel like this house grieves someone I'm supposed to be, but can't remember how to become?" No one moved. The house was quiet again, a heavy, sorrowful kind of quiet, and outside the rain began to fall once more. That night, Amira didn't sleep in the room they'd prepared for her. She stood at the threshold for a long time, eyes scanning the lilac walls and old posters from another life, a smiling cartoon sun, a quote about dreams taped crookedly above a dusty bookshelf. There were framed photos too, her as a child, laughing mid-run, curly hair flying behind her, eyes closed in joy. But she didn't recognize the girl, not really. She chose the couch instead, curling beneath a blanket as the storm outside rolled in heavier. The window panes shimmered with droplets that raced each other toward the sill. She watched them instead of closing her eyes. Sleep meant memories, and memories came sharp. By morning, the house had quieted into that soft, heavy silence only known by families who've forgotten how to ask the right questions. Denise moved like a ghost in the kitchen, setting a bowl of oatmeal on the table. Malcolm had left early for work, though she wasn't sure he had anywhere to go. He just needed space. They all did. Amira sat across from her, stirring the oatmeal without eating. Her eyes were puffy. She hadn't slept. She didn't allow mirrors, Amira said suddenly, unprompted. Denise looked up.
In the house, she continued. Every mirror was either covered or gone. If I saw my reflection in a window, she'd scold me, said it confused the mind.
Denise swallowed. Why? She said reflections were lies, that the real self was what I felt, not what I saw, and if I kept staring long enough, I'd forget who I was supposed to be. Denise's hands tightened around her coffee mug. Did you believe her? Amira shrugged. When you only hear one voice for a decade, it becomes the truth. There was a long pause. She called me by different names depending on how she felt. Some days I was her daughter, some days just girl, some days nothing. What did she call herself? Sometimes Vera, sometimes Mom. Her voice cracked slightly. She said I didn't need to. Outside, the wind bent the tree branches low, scraping against the siding with a soft groan. Denise wanted to reach across the table to hold her daughter's hand, but she didn't know if that would comfort or shatter her further. Amira finally took a bite, chewing slowly, like the food wasn't really what she needed, but she was trying anyway. There was a room, she said after a while, always locked, at the end of the hallway. I asked about it once and she slapped my wrist so hard I couldn't move my fingers for hours. What was in it?
I don't know, but I heard things, humming, machinery maybe, and sometimes voices.
Denise's brow furrowed. Voices? She'd talked to someone. Or something. I don't know. The door was thick, but I remember a smell. Oil, burned wood. Sometimes I'd smell it on her clothes, and she'd say it was from the garage. She paused, staring into her bowl again. But there was no garage. Denise opened her mouth, then closed it again. She had nothing to offer that wouldn't sound hollow. She made me keep journals, Amira said next, but never let me reread them. She'd take them, put them in boxes, said they were for when I was ready. Ready for what? She never said. The room fell still again. Then Amira asked without looking up. Do you know why I came back? Denise didn't answer. Because she told me not to. Over and over, she said the world had forgotten me, that I didn't exist out there anymore, but something inside me kept whispering, like a song I couldn't unhear. She looked up now and her eyes were clear, fierce, tired. I wanted to know if I was real to anyone. Denise stood slowly, walked to the counter, and pulled open a drawer. From beneath faded receipts and pens that no longer worked, she pulled out a small plastic camera, child-sized, Fisher-Price, red with a yellow shutter button. She placed it on the table in front of Amira. You took pictures of ants, of clouds, of me dancing in the kitchen. You were real every second. Amira picked it up with trembling fingers, a piece of her she didn't remember but suddenly, desperately wanted to, and for the first time, she cried. Not for the lost years, but for the proof that she had once existed without question. It was 3 days later when Letitia Cruz knocked on the Owens' door, the cold autumn air clinging to her coat, a thick manila envelope pressed tightly to her chest like a relic. Denise opened the door, weary but grateful. She hadn't been sleeping, not really. She moved through the house like someone in a fog, afraid to hope, afraid to trust. Amira sat on the back steps, eyes tracing the falling leaves, hands wrapped around the plastic camera like a tether to something that once mattered. Letitia didn't need an introduction. Amira remembered her. Not vividly, not clearly, but in shapes, in the smell of notebook paper and a blue leather satchel. "You always carried a pen behind your ear," Amira said quietly when they met. Letitia smiled, a sadness in her eyes. "Still do." They sat at the kitchen table where truths had begun to bleed out. Letitia opened the envelope, revealing copies of old case files, photos, timelines, but most notably, a photocopy of a journal page, handwritten, erratic, deeply personal. "We found these in a house outside Boone," she said. "The one Vera lived in before she moved you. They were buried under the floorboards. 7 black leather journals, each marked with a year, 2012 to 2014. Amira's hands trembled. "She told me never to read them, that the truth wasn't ready." Letitia slid one of the pages across the table. "I think it's time." Amira stared at the handwriting, instantly recognizing the sharp slant, the way certain letters curled into themselves. She read aloud. "The Owens woman is unraveling. She doesn't see it, but I do. Her daughter is delicate, open, curious, but neglected in subtle ways. Not bruises, not screaming, just absence, emotional vacancy." Her voice cracked. "She watches from the car, 5 hours, no one comes outside." Denise covered her mouth.
"That was the day she faltered. "I was working from home. I thought—" "You were drowning," Letitia finished for her gently. Vera had a pattern. She didn't snatch children from alleyways. She waited, watched, found cracks in families, and slid herself inside. Amira read further. "I offered rest. She accepted. I said 2 weeks. She never asked for details, just kissed her daughter's forehead and walked away." The paper shook in her hands. "She made it sound like she was doing me a favor." Letitia leaned forward. She believed she was. Denise stood from the table, tears silently falling, walking to the sink just to breathe. Amira turned the page. "She calls me Amira when I'm good, Layla when I'm not. Kid when she doesn't see me." Her voice dropped. "I think she loved me, but she loved her idea of me more." Letitia opened a second envelope, photos of the basement. Boxes, each labeled by year, filled with drawings, receipts, newspaper clippings, and dozens of cassette recordings.
One box, labeled Return, contained a map of Richmond with a date circled, the night Amira came back. "She planned it," Denise whispered. "She was preparing to give you back." Amira looked up, and her voice was flat. "Only after she finished whatever experiment I was." Letitia placed a small recorder on the table. This was the last entry. The date matches the week before she disappeared. She pressed play. Vera's voice, calm, brittle. "She's beginning to question. I tell her the world forgot her, but she dreams of places I never showed her. I think it's time she'll go back. They'll call it a miracle. But I'll know the truth. I built this version of her." The tape clicked off. Amira didn't move, didn't speak. Her fingers closed slowly around the camera, knuckles white. Then softly, "She thought I was hers. She thought she made me better." Denise whispered behind her, "You were never broken." Amira stood. "She kept everything, every picture I drew, every sentence I wrote. And still, she told me I didn't exist without her." Letitia stood too. "That's not the truth, isn't it?" Amira turned, voice sharp. "Because right now I don't know whose memories are mine. I don't know which parts of me were planted and which survived." Denise stepped forward but paused, not daring to cross the distance. "Then let's find out together," she said. "Let's untangle it piece by piece." Amira's eyes searched her mother's face, not for answers, but for sincerity. After a long moment, she nodded once. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of return. The sun was beginning to set when Amira walked back into the living room, her fingers trailing along the edge of the bookshelf like she was reading dust for clues. Denise sat on the floor with an old cardboard box in front of her, the edges worn, the tape peeling, filled with photo albums she hadn't dared open in years. She looked up as Amira approached, unsure whether to close the box or invite her in. Amira said nothing, just slowly sank to the carpet across from her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Denise slid one album forward, its red cover faded, a corner bent. She opened it. Inside were the early years, Amira at 3, wrapped in a towel shaped like a duck, grinning with missing teeth, asleep in a car seat with melted ice cream on her cheek. Amira studied the images with the distance of someone flipping through another person's memory. She looked like that girl, but she didn't feel like her. Denise turned a page. "This was your 5th birthday," she said gently. "You wanted a blue cake with strawberries. We ran out of balloons and you cried, but then you got over it when your dad made you laugh by putting the hat on backwards." Amira stared at the photo. "I remember the taste of the frosting, not the faces." Denise didn't know what to say, so she kept turning pages. 4th of July in the park. Swimming lessons. The time they went to the fair, and Amira begged to ride the spinning cups 3 times in a row. Amira pointed to one photo, herself wearing a red Mickey Mouse shirt, waving from the top of a slide. "I look free here," she said quietly. "You were," Denise replied. Amira didn't respond. She kept flipping, slowly, until she reached the last page. But something felt off. She turned the album over. It was bulging slightly, heavier on one side. She opened the back cover and found a photo tucked behind the plastic. Not in a sleeve, just loose. Not part of the official memories. She pulled it out. It was from the same birthday party, but in the background, blurred but unmistakable, stood a woman in a long grey coat, holding a cake. Vera? Amira froze. Denise leaned in, her face draining of colour. That's not in any of the others." "No," Amira whispered, "because she wasn't supposed to be there." She turned the photo over. On the back, in familiar handwriting, July 2nd, Amira's 5th, R dropped by with surprise. Denise took the photo in shaking hands. "That's my handwriting, but I don't remember writing this." "You called her R?" "I don't know. Denise looked like her breath had been stolen. "I was so tired that year. So many people came and went. She said she was from the community centre helping families. I thought maybe she just brought a cake." Amira stared at the photo again. Vera wasn't smiling. She was watching her, watching them. "She was already in my life," Amira said flatly, "long before the day I vanished." Letitia returned the next morning with more files, legal records, county reports, hospital notes. She sat down beside Amira at the dining table and slid over another photo. This one was grainier, security footage from a city building in Boone, dated March 2014. Vera and Denise shaking hands on a porch. Amira didn't react, she just said, "So she wasn't lying." Denise stood across the room, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. "I didn't know what she would become. I didn't know she would take you." "You knew enough," Amira said, not cruelly, but with the precision of someone stating a fact she'd accepted. "You were drowning, and you let me go." Denise's voice cracked. "I thought I was saving you, but I was just saving myself." Amira turned back to the photo. Vera's eyes stared through the paper like she still owned the moment. "She believed I was hers," she whispered. "Not because she stole me, but because you gave her the door." And for the first time since she returned, she didn't cry. She just sat still, letting the silence answer what no one else could. It was quiet the morning Amira returned to the tree at the back of the Owens' yard. The oak was still there, older now, limbs a little more crooked, bark darker from years of rain and sun and forgetting. There was no tree house anymore, just the worn remains of its foundation, 3 planks of soft wood and a patch of weeds that didn't care what used to stand there. In her hand, Amira held a green ribbon. Not the original. This one was new, fabric from a thrift store in Northside, faded at the edges, but strong. She knelt down in the dirt and tied it to the lowest branch, letting it flutter in the breeze. No ceremony, no speech. Just presence. Tom watched from the back porch, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he hadn't touched. He didn't call out to her. He didn't ask if she needed help. He just stayed. She liked that about him. He never rushed her grief. Later that evening, Denise knocked gently on the doorframe of the room Amira still refused to sleep in. Amira was sitting on the floor, her back against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, fingers turning the red plastic camera over and over again in her hands. Denise didn't come in. She sat at the threshold, like someone afraid of waking something delicate. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive me," she said. "Not anymore." Amira didn't answer. "I just wanted to tell you that I remember the day I bought that camera. You were 4. You asked if it could take pictures of the sky. I said yes, and you said, 'Good, I want to remember it if it ever leaves.'" Amira stared at the camera. "She told me you threw it away." "I didn't," Denise said softly. "I kept it. Even when I hated myself. Even when I thought you'd never come home. It stayed in the hallway drawer, like a promise I didn't know how to keep." Amira looked up. Her voice was steady, almost detached. "If I let you stay in my life, you don't get to be the mother who tucked me in. You have to be the woman who left and the one who waited. Both." Denise blinked, tears threatening but held back. "Okay, and you don't get to cry if I don't hug you." "I understand." Amira stood slowly, walked past her into the hallway, opened the drawer, and pulled out the camera again. Still dusty, still whole. She placed it gently on the counter. Then she whispered, "Then we'll try." In the days that followed, life didn't resume. It reshaped. Denise didn't ask Amira to sleep upstairs. She didn't push her to talk. Instead, she left tea by the couch in the mornings. She opened the blinds for light. She said goodnight from a distance and never turned off the hallway light, but never asked her to use it. Tom built a new bench beneath the oak. He never said why, but Amira knew. She sat there sometimes, alone, sometimes with him. No words, just breath. Letitia Cruz came by one last time before leaving town. She handed Amira a small box containing Vera's final letter, never sent, never spoken aloud. Amira read it once. Then she burned it in the fire pit and didn't watch the ashes rise. Instead, she enrolled in community college, photography. She didn't tell anyone at first. She just went, carrying the red plastic camera in her bag like a reminder, not of childhood, but of perspective. One afternoon, Denise asked if she wanted to go through the photo albums again. Amira surprised them both by saying yes. They sat on the living room floor, cross-legged, flipping through images of a girl Amira was still trying to become. And when they reached the last page, Amira tucked in something new. A photograph she had taken 2 days before. It showed the old oak tree, the green ribbon catching wind just slightly, and the bench beneath it bathed in soft golden light. The caption, scrawled in black ink beneath the photo, read, "Where I stopped being lost." And for the first time in years, Denise smiled without apology. And Amira smiled back, not because everything was healed, not because it didn't still hurt, but because for once, the pain didn't own her. It was just part of the picture.